Hello out there in YouTube land. This is Morris, man. As always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. And I appreciate the comments and the subscriptions, and please keep them coming. Today I'm going to do, I guess the topic is kind of a fun topic. And the name of the topic is some of my favorite bass players. Now, I'm not going to entitle this the best bass players, because if I did, I have a ton of comments saying, why isn't this guy on the list and why is this guy on the list? So I'm going to play it safe and just give you a short list of some of my personal favorite bass players, and I'm going to explain why they are. And the first one is, and before I mention this gentleman's name, I'm just going to say this. You know, we all know, you know, the Louis Johnsons, the Mr. Mark from Slave, the Bootsy Collins, and those are great bass players, and they got their notoriety. But unfortunately, there's some guys back in the day that I felt that was just as good and very unique in their playing that didn't get their notoriety. Most people never heard of them, you know. And one of the people on my list his name is Kirkwood Coakley. He's a bass player from the group in the late 70s by the name of T Connection. Their biggest hit was You Get the Best of My Love. And actually, Kirkwood's brother was the lead singer and piano player of that group. He has a very unique playing style, and what I love about his playing style is, as a good musician, you know when to add your additional fills and ambiance, and you know when to pull back and not give too much. And I think Kirkwood was perfect as far as a balance, because just to name a few songs, you know, if you get a chance, YouTube, look them up. And one of them is called Choosing, and the other one is called Let's Do It Today. And in that particular song, he really adds some really beautiful feels. Next on the list is, and before I mention him, a lot of times artists, other talents overshadow their talent because of, you know, if they're a great singer, they might have another talent, but the singing is so good that people kind of don't pay too much attention to the other additional talents. And this particular person, Ray Parker Jr., who's one of my all-time favorite songwriters. You know, we think of him as a great songwriter, singer, and arranger, underrated, phenomenal guitar player. But oddly enough, he was actually a great bass player. When he was with his group called Radio, he played bass in the majority of those songs. And if you get a chance to listen to some of them like Rock On, he actually does a nice little bass solo. And he has a very unique bass playing style and tone. And whenever you hear it, you know it's Ray Parker Jr., because I don't think I've ever heard anybody that that sounds like him when he plays bass. You know, his approach is just kind of different. Okay, next on the list is Louis Johnson. I mean, what can I say about Louis Johnson? Other than he had taken slap bass technique to another level, because Larry Graham from Grand Central Station and Sly and the Family Stone actually invented that technique back in the late 60s. The very first time it showed up on wax, it was on a song called Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself. But what was so unique about Louis Johnson's bass playing and slap bass playing technique is the majority of the guys that played bass in that fashion, the majority of their songs like Slide by Slave, Firecracker by Mass Production, and a couple of others, just to name a few. The majority of those songs, if I'm not mistaken, were in the key of V. And that's because most bass players just played in the key of V as far as hitting that open E, you know, and getting that slap tone. But what Louis Johnson did was pretty interesting and clever and innovative. He was able to play that slap bass technique in other keys, because he was able to take his thumb and hold down that E string, and then he was able to you know, hold on to a note and then play in that key. So that was pretty clever on his part, because most bass players, again, just play that style in E. Okay, next on the list is Mr. Mark from Slave. I mean, again, what can you say about him? And what I think a lot of people kind of didn't notice was, not only, of course, he was a tremendous bass player, but he wrote very good bass lines. I mean, I think Slide is probably the most recognized R&B bass line of all time. You know, I think, you know, that's my opinion. Okay, moving along. Jameson from the Motown era. I mean, another legendary bass player. You know, he took bass playing to another level, because first of all, if I'm not mistaken, he just played with this finger. You know, he didn't use these other fingers. And his bass lines was so intricate. I mean, they weren't simple. They weren't three note patterns. I mean, he was just a extraordinary bass player, and he left too soon. You know, we lost him too soon. Okay, next on the list, and I hope I get this gentleman name right, Kasem Sutton from the group Utopia. Todd Rundgren headed up that group. They're definitely one of my all-time favorite groups, and when I do another video on some of my favorite groups, they're definitely going to be on that list. And then I'll explain why they're on that list. But he kind of resembles and reminds me of a young Paul McCartney, tremendous bass player. One of my favorite songs, and I did a cover on it, was called Fix Your Gaze on Me. And also a great singer. If you get a chance to hear a song that they wrote and composed, the name of it's called Made It. Him and Todd Rundgren is singing harmonies in the background, and he's singing the top note. He has a really nice voice. I mean, they blend very well. And I haven't heard too many people that can sing that high register. And a really, really great bass player and great singer and writer. Okay, next on the list. We all know this guy, Bernard Edwards of Chic. The late Bernard Edwards. Rest in peace, my brother. I mean, what can I say about Bernard? When I first heard Rapper's Delight, Dance, 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 and Everybody Dance, I would have loved to have been in the studio just to watch his fingers, because I've never heard then or since a bass player that can play that fast with these fingers. You know, sometimes I know he used a pick, but a lot of times he just used his finger. To this day, there's some bass lines of his that I just can't even do, because I don't have the dexterity in my fingers to play that fast and that hard, you know, and that furious. But, you know, very unique bass player. And when you hear his bass lines, you know it's Bernard, you know. Next on the list, Stanley Clark. I think Stanley Clark opened up the door for the Victor Wootons and the Marcus Millers, because I think Stanley Clark was one of the first bass players to say, hey, I'm going to play my bass like a lead guitar player, meaning that I'm going to play the melody on my bass, when bass was traditionally holding down the foundation and just playing a series of patterns, and that was it. But for some reason, Stanley stepped outside that box and decided to kind of take it to another level. So I think, you know, the Victor Wootons and the Marcus Millers should thank Stanley Clark, because I think Stanley Clark opened the door for that style of playing. Okay, next on the list is another favorite, Bootsy Collins. You know, Bootsy has a very unique bass playing style, because a lot of time when you play bass, you're playing just kind of a pattern. And Bootsy was kind of like all over the place. It's like, Dad, what is this? But it was good, you know, but it was very unique. And I love his bass playing. I love his compositions. I love his arrangements and productions. And last on the list, because I'm going to keep it short, just 10 guys, Larry Graham from Grand Central Station. You know, again, the innovative of the slap bass technique. Great singer, great songwriter. Great band leader. You know, when he left Sly and the Family Stone, he started Grand Central Station. And they was one of my favorite groups too. And Larry Graham was not afraid to do some different things and kind of step outside the R&B box, so to speak. And I think he kind of got that from when he was with Sly and the Family Stone, because Sly and the Family Stone was kind of like a R&B group, a gospel group, and a rock group fused together. You know, they were kind of new as far as their sound from a black band. And Larry Graham, I think, kind of took that with him when he went and formed Grand Central Station, because a lot of their songs were like traditional R&B, then kind of a rock fusion thing, and then kind of hard to explain some of the styles, but very good, you know, bass player. So that's my list, and I might do another one in the future, but those are some guys I thought needed to get their recognition. Some of the guys on that list that most people never heard of. So on that note, I'm going to sign off, and as always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. Till next time, take care.